you guys. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Hope everybody slept well, had a great Wednesday night. I'm sorry that I wasn't live last night. I just needed a little break. Um, and I was watching the new Netflix series with Evan Peters, Dahmer, the story of a monster, or Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, something like that. I can't remember the exact title, but I watched there's 10 episodes and I watched 3 of them. My youngest daughter and I, who is old enough to watch that, just in case I have anybody worried about my parenting. She's plenty old. In fact, she suggests a lot of cases for me that she watches on YouTube and finds interesting and thinks you guys and I would find interesting. So it's actually really well done. Ryan Murphy is part of it. So it has that his edge and element to it. Like I said, it's done really, really well. Good morning, Nonstop Mom. Good morning, Bethy Cakes. Hello, hello. And it really is. It's done really well, and it's very. I mean, it's dramatized, obviously, but it is rooted in a lot of facts. And I would suggest it. Hey, Corky, anybody that's fascinated by Dahmer should definitely check it out. It's shaping up to be really good. There's what I say, 10 episodes. Yeah, so there's that. And then this morning I was watching some of yesterday's trial that I missed, and I will just catch you guys up a little bit because I have some questions about some of the testimony. Hey Mo, good morning. Because and I think what I'm going to do is on Sunday I'm going to do like an overview where we sort of discuss the testimony that's happened this week and do a little bit more of a deep dive where we talk more about how how it pertains to the case and the investigation, because I have some questions. Okay, like I found it interesting that so yesterday. Let me just start. And yes, I have had a 5-hour energy, and yet my brain is still can't stick to one topic, so I'm a little all over the place, but I'll get it under control, hopefully, as much as I can. So so what happened yesterday was the special agent Fortner from the BCI testified the majority of the day. Okay, and then after lunch, the forensic pathologist from a couple of days ago, she also testified again. But this time they were obviously talking about the crime scene and the autopsies pertaining to um, Clarence Frankie Roden and Hannah Gilley. Okay. And I think what has struck me is the amount of gunshot wounds, and more specifically, the amount of gunshot wounds as it and where they occurred. Like for um, Hannah, 5 in the face again. And there's something just that just sort of, it just seems unnecessary, right? So the medical examiner is testifying, and she also found um, what she found in her autopsy report is the caliber of projectile, because that's what medical examiners refer to when they're talking about bullets. They refer to them as a projectile. And what she was commenting on yesterday is the amount of damage that these projectiles did, given the fact that they're 22. She said that she hadn't seen this level of damage done using a 22 caliber projectile. Okay. Well, yeah, I'll leave it like that. Anyway, so she said that she knew that there are some bullets, because she said that a 22 is a common weapon they see in Cincinnati. So she said that, she was interested, curious about it. So she did find that there are some 22s that the bullets used will they have some that are filled with extra gunpowder, which is basically what was the situation here. It's called a 22 LR. And so I thought the LR was long range, but she said long rifle. So I'm not, good morning, Gail. I'm not that familiar with guns where I understand all of the things. Like, I know how to fire a gun, um, and how to hold a gun correctly and all of that. But, um, well, see, here's the thing about the cartel, Mo. they don't they don't linger, okay? And when they okay, so it also depends on the offense, right? So if the cartel is coming for somebody because, for example, they were they owe money. The way that they would handle a person who, or people who angered them over money, is very different than the way they would handle a person that, or people that were what they consider rats, right? Snitches, ratas. Um, what they do in those situations are different. So the thing of it is, they would not linger in a crime scene long enough. They wouldn't need to shoot somebody 5 times in the head, and they probably wouldn't use 22s. So, although if they were trying to make it look cartel-esque, right? Wouldn't the smart thing to do have been to raid the grow operation? But they didn't. The cartel also would not have covered Chris Sr. and Gary Roden with a blanket, with a comforter. They would have just left them where they lied. They actually wouldn't have even drug them anywhere. They would have just left them. Um, and the other thing is that there was money that wasn't taken either. So if it were over money, right, they would have taken the money, and they probably would have taken the plants. Or if nothing, but this is different. Um, See, the cartel, when they do things, right? They come in because they want to, correct, Mo. That's also correct. When they do when there's a retaliation made by them, they're trying to, um, it's not only for punishment for the person who has done whatever they've done again, that in the cartel's mind necessitates punishment, right? But it's also to send a message. See, when you're when you're in organized crime, because the people that work for you are spread out, right, over like the entire country. It's you have to you need to It's difficult to keep human beings in line just in general. Like, look at what happens on YouTube. YouTube has a ton of terms of service, right? And yet people be breaking them left and right because we don't know how to really, I mean, we can police ourselves, we just choose not to. So people are hard to control, right? Because humans do what humans do. So there so it's not only for a punishment for the person or people who have wronged them, right? But it's also sends a message to everybody else. We are not to be messed with. We're not playing with you people. You either act right or you get left. You know what I'm saying? So, um yeah, there's that. And they are scary, Mo, and especially because it's changed over the years. Back long time ago, decades ago, um, there was a morality to the cartel where they did not harm women and children. And under the new leader, that's no longer honored. And so now that's what makes them even, scarier. The whole thing is scary. Well, correct, Bethy Cakes. That's another excellent point is why would they? And so I think that and I read this and I was thinking this about specifically the amount of gunshots and where the gunshots were and all of this, right? And why would the people do this, right? It's very personal. And if you think about it, see, the child, the newborn that Hannah had belonged to Charlie Gilly. And Charlie Gilly is Hannah Gilly's brother. And so I was thinking that he has it's personal to him. She Hannah Gilly would have, it's not that big of a town to begin with, right? But Hannah Gilly surely would have played some role in Hannah Roden and her brother Charlie Gilly getting together, which would explain the anger that Jake had towards her. So it's it's all personal. But then we have the shoes. And I am still stuck on these shoes. And I was commenting on it in the Facebook group that I shared with you guys in I think Monday or Tuesday stream. And it's it's interesting about the shoes. And because so two pairs of shoes were bought, right? And when according to the state's opening, the prosecutor said that when confronted with respect to these shoes, Angela Wagner basically said that she bought them for her boys. Now, I was thinking about this because what people say is important, obviously. And it's, the way that they say it. And typically, mom boys, or mom boys, boy moms, which I am both a boy mom and a girl mom, but initially I was a boy mom because I had my boys first. I would refer to my sons as my boys. And eventually, obviously, I had two girls following the boys. And so when I refer to my sons, again, I say my boys. But when I'm like talking to my daughters about their brothers and their father, I usually will use the term the guys, not the boys, because I don't consider my husband a boy. So that tells me that it's likely that the shoes were purchased for Billy, not Billy, Jen, come on, Jake and George the Fourth. Because, and I've been thinking about this, if you remember, also with the opening statement, is Nonstop Mom in here? Because I hope yes, she is. Okay. Because Nonstop Mom, all of the parts of the opening statement are coming back, right? I always need just a little something to kick it off, right? So this is what I was thinking about. Two pairs make sense. At first, they didn't to me, but now they do. Because if you think back to the opening statement, Jake and and George were supposed to shoot Chris Sr. and Gary and whoever else might have been in that house. I think that the way that this was planned was actually for George the fourth and Jake to be the ones who went into the home, and for Billy Wagner to be the lookout and the getaway. I don't think Billy Wagner was ever supposed to go into those homes. And the reason I say this is because if you think about it, right? So Billy Wagner called or texted Chris Sr. the evening of April 21st, 2016, with an agenda that he wanted to meet with him, right? And surely the Wagners recognized the fact that when this was all said and done, that law enforcement was going to be able to track the call or the text. Okay. So he had already, just by making that call or text, I feel like it was a call, the call. He had, or Billy Wagner had already put himself at the home of a victim. Okay. So if you're going to put yourself physically at the home of the victim, you certainly would not want to have anything physical and forensic linking you to that home. Also, on top of it, i.e., shoe prints, right? Obviously, there's the normal stuff. You don't want to leave any hair behind. You don't want to leave any fingerprints. No touch DNA. No blood. Nothing. Right? You'd like to you'd like to be able to have a reasonable explanation for being at the home without making yourself appear to be appear to be the last person that saw the victims alive. Hey, Lorianne, you too. You have a fantastic day. So, in thinking about all of this, it makes sense that there were only two pairs of shoes purchased because Billy Wagner was not supposed to go into any of those homes. George and Jake were supposed to take care of Chris Sr. and Gary Roden right there in the doorway. And they didn't. Couldn't, wouldn't, whatever the situation was, they didn't. at the end of the day. And Billy, no, Billy was not still hidden in the truck. Billy went to the door, okay, at Chris Sr.'s house because they had arranged to meet that evening. Okay. So Billy Wagner goes to the door, knocks on the door. And when Chris Sr. opened the door, that is when Jake and George Wagner the fourth were supposed to come out and ambush. And for whatever reason, hey, Tony, Jake didn't fire. So Chris then had another ruse and he said, "Oh shit, I don't have my phone. Can you call it?" So Chris then Senior then goes to call the phone. All right. And that is when Billy goes to the truck and retrieves a firearm. And that's when the ambush occurs. Right. So Billy was never supposed to um, be inside of any of these crime scenes. I think he was supposed to be outside and act as a lookout. And if anybody came running out of the homes, right, then he was intended to handle business. He was not intended to go in the houses. That was a flaw in their plan. You know what they say, best laid plans. You know, you can't always you can't hey Amelia, you can't always you can make you can make the plans as much as you want to, but you can't, like, when other human beings are involved, you can't account for unforeseen events or how they're going to react or whatever. I just So now that I'm thinking about these two pairs of shoes, it makes sense, unless I have this completely wrong and Billy was wearing one pair of shoes and Jake was wearing the other. I don't I you know, we'll have to see how it unfolds, but to my mind, that's what makes the most logical sense. That Billy Wagner was never supposed to go into the homes because he'd already put himself at the crime scene with that phone call. Because if you think about it, granted, there are four residences, obviously, right? But it's one three of them are on one property and then one is down the street, right? So he already had put himself there with the phone call. So definitely you don't want to have um and that's the thing. See if now I'm really now my wheels are really turning. All right, so you have Billy Wagner there, right? And he's already placed himself there. This is a known fact. If the shoes were purchased for him and there were footprints in mud or blood or anywhere inside and outside of the house, right? That matched, it would be a problem, right? So they didn't want to have Billy Wagner in these you know basic ass shoes from Walmart, right? Am I making sense? Are you guys following me? Because he you if any footprints were outside of the home and Billy Wagner has already put himself there, then there's no issue if he's wearing, like, for example, if he wore boots and the boot imprints are, outside of the home or on the porch or something, right? That's explainable because of the phone call. Yeah, we met over there, right? But if the shoe prints that are found in front of the house or on the porch, right, don't match any shoes that are found in Billy Wagner's home, that's going to look suspicious because there should be something that matches, right? Okay. All right, good. We're understanding. It's harder for me in the morning to work out all the little nuances, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They already put him there, so his shoes had to match. So the shoes had to be, in my opinion, for George and Jake. There we go. See? Let's see. Is this? They're not in court yet. I'm still waiting, you guys. And they're a little bit tardy. It is 9:19 in the AMs. So the fact is, hopefully, the jury will reason it out. Okay, good. Good. I'm glad. Thank you, Nonstop Mom. Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Gail. Felt like I was a little rambly. And so, because I'm like piecing it together and talking at the same time. And quirky, yay. Okay. As long as you guys are following, I'm good. I don't want to, just hopefully the jury will suss it out and reason it out the way that I did. That's the only thing that makes sense. And so, in thinking that, this is what makes Angela Angela Wagner an important witness, because if she uses the same language in her testimony as the prosecutor said she did in her, I don't know if it's really a confession, but I would imagine it's more like like in an interview that they did, because it's not a confession. She didn't say that they were used. She never acknowledged that they wore those shoes in the commission of this crime. She only acknowledged that she bought them, and the only reason she did that is because they had the receipt for the shoes, and on top of it, they had the Walmart security footage showing her purchasing those shoes, and so all of those things. Well, no, GPS would not have put him there, Mo, but calling so when they pulled phone records from Chris Senior's phone, because that's what they would have done. They would have, I mean, they did do it, but that's, if you're planning something like this, you're trying to think of all of the investigative tools that could be used. And it's been a common practice since way, but even before 2016, obviously, that they will pull cell phone records, right? So if they were to pull Chris Senior's cell phone records, they would see that there was a call from Billy to Chris. So they would have come to Billy and they would have said, "Why did you call him? What did you guys talk about? Yada, yada, yada." Right. And Billy would have to acknowledge the call. And again, so Billy would have to acknowledge the call. Then, hi, Jody is cool. Then there is the text. I forgot about this part too. There's the text from Dana to Chris Sr., and I believe that the text references Billy Wagner's car being out there or something about the meeting, because she knew about it too. So, um, there you have it. Billy has to account for being there, for making the call and being there. So it's not from the GPS on his phone. No, they all intentionally left their phones at home and had people had Angela using their home, or using their home. Geez, Jen, this is why people get confused when you talk. I did take the long road. Sorry, Nonstop Mom. It's morning. Cut me some slack. um, but they had Angela back at the Wagner's place using Jake, Billy, and probably George's too, phones to make it appear as if they were home. So all of this, I mean, you have to take a minute to acknowledge the lengths that this family went through in thinking through all the if then but clauses, because that's really what it takes to do something like this. And they absolutely did. Mo. Ah. If you While we're waiting for court to start, if you guys wouldn't mind going and hitting the thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate it. And while we're here, I'm gonna drop the membership link for you guys. I have a new level that I added, or a tier that I added recently. It is called the Kookaloo tier. It comes from Diane Downs, referring to other people as kookaloos, knowing she's the biggest kookaloo of them all. And that is the it's the 99-cent tier, I believe it is. Thank you, Gail. Appreciate it. Yes, that family was 100% on a mission. I'm also going to drop my Cash App, and I don't like to do this very often, so I just try to do it once a stream. If you guys want to give your girl a tip, I have PayPal and Cash App. Any tips are greatly appreciated, although not required. Just you being here is equally as appreciated. Um, but yeah, they were 100% on a mission, and I have to take a step back to acknowledge the if then but clauses. I do that frequently in my everyday life. I run through, if I do this, what will then happen, right? All the different scenarios, because that's part of adulting. You know what I mean? But I don't use it for nefarious reasons. Yesterday evening, I was sitting outside because it was actually kind of nice yesterday. Wasn't too muggy. It's kind of, I like this time of year in Florida. It's cooling off a little bit. I mean, cooling off for Florida. Let's be realistic here. Anyway, and I was scrolling through the tickety talks. So sometimes when things get too heavy, and I have this is a sad case. They're all sad cases, but this one, because of the babies and it's an entire family, and just it's heavy and it's sad. So I was scrolling through the TikToks yesterday, and lo and behold, there was a good morning, Super Mama D. There was a TikTok from this woman whose son had like expensive name brand shoes and name brand clothes that he wasn't taking care of. So what does this mama do? This mama takes this boy, he's about 12, looks like 12, 13, somewhere in that vicinity, to the Walmarts. And what does she purchase? But what I think, oh, welcome to memberships, Mo. Welcome to Kookaloos. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. What does she do but purchase the shoes, the Velcro shoes, tennis shoes that I think we're talking about with respect to this crime. And let me tell you something. Also, the point of the TikTok was made. She went to Walmart, she purchased tennis shoes, a whole outfit, socks, and underwears for 23 bucks. Yes, the old man shoes. Let me see if I can find a picture of them while we're just kicking it, waiting for court to start. Let me see if I can find them, because they are not attractive at all. All right, hold on. Hold on. I need to make it. Let me go images. Let's see here. If I can find them. I suppose I could pull up the TikToks. Here they are. Yep. I think this is it. Hold on. Okay. Walmart.com is being completely extra. And all I wanted to do was save the image. And here they go searching for me for how many shoes carry them and how do I want the item and blah, 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 blah. Don't be so needy, Walmart.com. I ain't buying these shoes. It's for research purposes only. Also, just so you know, they are available in many, many sizes, including wide, and they are $13.97, making them what I would imagine are the correct price range that we're looking for. So, oh, Tony, it's here you go, babe. It's let me put it in the chat for you. Oh, wait. Right, let me make sure that's right. Yes, that's right. There you go, babe. Thank you so much. Okay. Let me upload these really quick. Not background. I want to do an overlay. What are they doing in court today? Why are they tardy? This judge is usually fantastic about starting on time. Ow. All right, y'all ready for these shoes? Here we go. Those are the shoes. And they are $13.97. So there's that. Oh, there we go. Now we're in court.
Today is Thursday, September 22nd, 2022. This is the case of State of Ohio plaintiff versus George Washington Wagner IV, case number 2018-CR155. And today is another day of jury trial. We've
Aw,
convened here
Amelia.
in the
Good
absence
morning,
of the jurors. The defendant is present in court. He is represented by his attorneys, John Parker and Richard Nash. The State of Ohio is represented by the prosecuting attorney, Rob Junk, and also by special prosecuting attorneys Angela Canepa and Andrew Wilson. Also present is Ryan Scheider, special agent with Ohio, BCI&I. We've convened here in the absence of jurors. A motion was filed earlier this morning, motion number 111, entitled Motion for Mistrial.
Of course.
The court intended to give counsel an opportunity to argue that motion prior to the jurors being brought in. An oral motion was made yesterday, which the court had indicated it was overruling. However, this written motion was filed this morning, so the court wants to give counsel an opportunity to argue that. And so, Mr. Parker or Mr. Nash, on behalf of the defendant, are you ready to argue this motion?
Yes, thank you, Judge.
Is the state ready to have this argued now?
It really is.
All right.
My
Thank you, Judge.
boys.
Appreciate the opportunity. As you just stated, we did make an oral motion yesterday. We needed to memorialize it by written motion, and I failed to make a couple of the details in the arguments, which I placed in a written motion.
Let me turn him up
Your
just
Honor,
a scotch.
the point here is that the state has repeatedly used gruesome photographs, mainly from the crime scenes of the victims and through the testimony of the coroner, the various autopsy photographs of the victim. And it's important to emphasize to the court that, the case against my client, George Wagner, is about complicity. All right, that's been the state's theory throughout all this. He's not a shooter. And we've never put into controversy, it's not a point of contention about the manner or cause of death of these various victims. They were all shot to death. That's very clear. We've never disputed any of that. It's very clear that there are 3 different types of guns that were used. We've never disputed any of that. The question is whether my client was complicit with the people that did the shooting, person or people that did the shooting. That's really the issue before this jury now. It's not whether Jake Wagner or whoever fired the fatal shots. That'll be established quite clearly. But to continue to repeatedly use these gruesome photographs against my client when he is not the shooter, it's unfair. And even if the evidence is somehow marginally relevant, and we're not conceding that, even if it's marginally relevant to some issue in the case, there's still the danger of unfair prejudice, which the court must weigh under the evidence rules, under the due process clause, to ensure my client is getting a fair trial. So, the case I cited yesterday, I cite once again in here, that photos are admissible if relevant.
No, they're not. Nonstop, Mom.
Issue.
I agree.
Especially with the coroner. It's not in dispute the manner or cause of death. And so, these photographs are difficult to look at, and they're not relevant, and they're not probative of a disputed issue in this case. And so we filed this written motion because we're going to go into scene 3 today, all right? And then at some point we'll go into scene 4, and we're going to have a repetition of gruesome photographs, both from the crime scene and eventually from the corner. And so we bring this up now, and we want a continuing objection on the record, so we're not interrupting every time a photograph is shown, because we have a contemporaneous objection rule, and I don't want to be accused of waiving any objection, but I don't think it's also necessary to object every time a photograph is shown, otherwise it's just too disruptive. So I want a continuing objection on the record to make it very clear we're not waiving this issue, and we think it's gone too far at this point, given that my client is accused only of complicity.
I want to hear what the state says in response and the ruling,
Let
and
me
then we're
let
going
me
to
say
talk
before
about
I hear from the
this.
state, the one difficulty with the continuing objection is that we have several photographs that go up. Some of them might not be what you would have described as gruesome. So I'm not sure whether you're objecting to all photographs or how the court would know which ones that you feel should not be viewed.
I'm happy to object to each one that I think if that's what the court wants me to do. I have no problem with that. I don't want to be accused of trying to throw the state off its pace or its case here. But I think, the most gruesome ones are pretty obvious, right? They're the close-up photographs. If there's a bullet hole in a victim and they show it from 6 different angles, they shave the person's hair and then they get closer and they get closer and they get closer. This becomes gruesome. It's repetitive. It's not necessary. All right. When a victim is lying in bed and has been shot and killed, perhaps one photograph will accomplish whatever goal they think is necessary, not 5 or 6 from this angle, that angle, this angle, that angle. It becomes repetitive and gruesome. The close-ups are just not necessary. We're not contesting the caliber of the bullet. We're not contesting the cause and manner of death. And if you want me to object with each photograph, I'm more than happy to do that. But that's our position.
Well, I think that it would be a clearer record if you objected to the ones that you felt should not be shown, as opposed to just having a continuing objection, because some of the photographs I think you may not find to be objectionable. So in order to make the record clear, I think that would be
We're happy
best.
to do that.
You're talking over the judge. That's so
Behalf of the,
disrespectful.
state.
Your Honor, some of these arguments we made yesterday, but first of all, would note for the record that at sidebar on several instances that Mr. Parker has not objected to the jurors seeing the photographs, only that we were publishing them on the big screens, and the impact that had on the audience. etc. So this is a different argument now with the impact of the juror. So I would say that he has not yet objected to the photos that have come in thus far. Additionally, Your Honor, the state has the burden of proof in this case. We have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt each and every element of the offense. We have to first prove that there was an aggravated murder before we can have George be complicit in any of those where he was not the shooter. Again, we've repeatedly said that the state's theory is not necessarily that George was not a shooter. So establishing the weapons that were used, the positions the bodies were in, also again goes to corroborate Jake Wagner's statements about what happened, because this evidence will corroborate a great deal of that, Your Honor. The number of shooters in this case is absolutely a disputed fact. So again, I said back in chambers, we've been very conservative in our displaying of photos. One of the cases that Mr. Parker cited states that we cannot, courts have been almost universal in their condemnation of omitting photographs depicting the victim's body after it has been subject to autopsy procedures. We have not shown a single one of those where, when they do their internal exams, that's what this is referencing. Even though there was certainly some probative value to be gained from that, we on our own volition chose not to show those. But, as far as the shading and then showing that has been important to Dr. Lohman's testimony when she's talking about stippling or other things that are visible. And again, it helps the jury to be able to see what she is talking about. So, and once again, Your Honor, the number of victims in this case is not the state's doing, right? That has nothing to do. The number of photos per individual, is certainly not objectionable, especially because we are trying to be very conservative about that. So again, the state feels that everything that we have put into evidence so far is important to connecting the dots later for the jury and proving the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt of each and
Thank
every
you,
offense in
Tony.
this
Thank
case.
you so much, babe.
The
Sorry, I was
burglaries, the aggravated
just
burglaries, the
sucked
aggravated
into
murders,
this.
it's not
I'm
just
listening to
murders
this
that are
argument.
trafficked. So,
Thank you so
we would
much,
respectfully
sweetheart. I
request the court
appreciate that
to
so
overrule
much.
the motion for mistrial again.
I have noticed, just based on the numbers used here, that if the numbers indicate the number of photographs you have, that you're not using all of your photographs, or maybe what you might even describe as nearly all of the photographs that you have. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, Your Honor. I mean, we are trying to not.
No, you're fine, babe. You got the right one. Thank you
the
so
jurors
much.
To, these.
You guys are great. I
photos,
appreciate every one of you.
Just from the aspect of, they probably don't appreciate it. So we're trying to only show them what we feel is necessary to prove the elements in this case.
Is it the state's position that some of these photographs are relevant for other purposes other than to show cause of death?
Absolutely, Your Honor. And one of the biggest things I said, in opening statement, they basically said that Jake Wagner is a liar, because Jake Wagner absolutely says that his brother, George, accompanied them, helped prepare for the murders, helped conceal the murders afterwards, and was present and entered the residences, etc. So
Thank
any
you.
piece of evidence
Thank you,
that
Tony.
we can introduce that corroborates the remaining part of Jake's statement is absolutely of high probative value to the state.
Anything further from the defense?
No, thank you.
The court will overrule defendant's motion number 111, entitled motion for mistrial. And the court will consider at a later point 110, which had to do with judicial notice of the fact that 3122 Union Hill Road, what I'm being asked to find by judicial notice is that is in Soda County, Ohio, and the court will defer ruling on that. So is counsel ready now to have the jury brought in on behalf of the state?
Yes, Your Honor.
On behalf of the
Yes.
defense?
Okay, so while they bring in the jury, let's take a moment to discuss this. So I'm going to argue 2 points. And the first point I'm going to argue is a emotional, simply legal argument. Okay. So the defense is correct in bringing up this motion. Okay. It is their job, it is their sworn duty to advocate for their client in the best way. Okay. Now, the reason that they are bringing this up is because they're arguing this without saying it outright. What they're saying is that the state doesn't have any physical evidence that ties George Wagner to being at those crime scenes when these crimes were committed, and that they are showing those photographs in order to make essentially an emotional appeal to the jury. That's really what their argument means. That's really what they're trying to argue. You don't have anything that physically puts our client at these crime scenes. And we're not disputing that these victims died in the manner that you're stating, or that they were shot X amount of times. We're not disputing. Those are not facts in dispute. But what you're doing is you don't have physical evidence, so you're trying to make an emotional plea to the jury. That's what that argument really is about. And in a sense, legally, he may be correct. In fact, he probably is correct. There's probably a little element of that going on, to be fair. Conversely, let me think how I want to say this, but I have to be quick because they're about to call witnesses and shit. What the state is arguing is that their argument implies that at some point they intend to put a gun in George Wagner's hands. And that's why this is necessary. Now, I will say this. If they don't do that, if they don't follow through with that argument, this is going to be an issue. Okay? Because circumstantial evidence is okay, is evidence, Mo. It is perfectly legal and enter evidence and can be used and has been used to convict people before. The point is what is the state actually charged? What is the state attempting to prove here? Are they? It seems that the defense and the state are not don't see the charges the same way. Defense is under the impression that the state is arguing complicity, meaning if you were at a crime scene and you helped,
Good morning,
aided in
ladies
any
and
way
gentlemen of the jury.
other than
Good to see
being a
all of you here
principal
this
to the
morning.
crime. Hold on, let me mute him just really quick because I don't
We
want
are
to talk
beginning
over
another
him,
day
but
of our
or feel like I'm
jury.
having to yell. So what the defense is under the impression of is that the state is not arguing that George Wagner acted as a principal party in this crime, but was complicit in the planning and the getting rid of evidence, right? Not that he was an actual shooter. However, the state has now said, um, we intend to put a gun in George Wagner's hand. Essentially, that is what they said when they said that. Who shot, who did the shooting is 100% is absolutely in dispute. The only way that that can absolutely be in dispute is if they put a gun in George Wagner's hand, and they're going to have to now at this point. They're going to have to attempt to do that. Otherwise, there will be, I would suspect, there's going to be a revisiting of this motion for mistrial. It'll be filed probably in a different way, but yeah, this is going to be something that gets revisited, I believe. Okay.
Good morning. Doing fine, thanks.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Brian White.
Okay. And can you please tell us what you do for a living?
Currently, I am a lieutenant with the Madison County Sheriff's Office, which is in London, Ohio. I
Okay.
oversee the investigation.
So it could be what I
And when
should
did
say,
you become the
Mo,
lieutenant,
is that it
in
could
charge of investigations at the
potentially
Madison County Sheriff's Office?
be
In
a
January of
problem later
2019.
on down the road.
And prior to
Um,
January of 19,
And
where
it
did
could,
you work?
and depending
I
on
was
if it's an
deputy
issue
sheriff
that's
in Clark
raised
County
again,
from 1996
and
to
depending on the judge
2008,
ruling on it,
and
it could
then
be a
from
problem
2008 to
moving way
2018, I
forward
was a
in the
BCI
appeals
special agent
process. See,
assigned to
these
crime
are the
scene.
types of trial errors
Okay.
that
So
can get a conviction overturned should
approximately
there
10
be a
years
conviction in
as a
this
crime
case.
scene
These are
agent for
the
Ohio
trial
DCI.
errors
That's
you
correct.
want to avoid.
And can you tell us,
And the state
do
making the
you have
statement
an
that and the response
approximation
that
of
she
how
made,
many, say,
again, of
felony
course, the
crime
burden of
scenes
proof
have
is
you,
always on the state
processed
in
during
a
that
murder
tenure?
trial, right? In the initial
Well over
trial.
300.
So this
Okay.
is,
And is
I
that
must
felonies
ponder
or
this further.
homicides?
That's death investigations, homicides. That's not counting the other
Hey,
types
Aussie
of
Girl
felony
Jen, good
crimes we would
morning.
investigate.
Okay, so well over 300 homicide scenes or death investigations that you have processed the crime scene for,
That's correct.
correct? Okay, and can you tell us
I'll be right back,
what kind of
but I'm going to be in chat.
specialized training have you received in crime scene investigations? And do you need to look at this?
I can state generally,
Okay.
over 1,200 hours of crime scene and/or investigative trainings to include crime scene reconstruction, bloodstain pattern analysis, shooting reconstruction, crime scene reconstruction, and various other miscellaneous crime scene classes such as 3D scanning, just anything involving forensics. I've been to a class. I'm also certified through the state of Ohio as a master evidence technician, which also is training in forensics and crime scene processing, as well as a graduate of the National Forensic Academy through the University of Tennessee, which is a 400-hour forensic crime scene training program.
Okay. And you learn things like how to collect fingerprints or blood swabs and things
Correct.
like that. Things you do at a crime scene.
Things that you,
basically.
yes, the skills and tools necessary to be able to collect evidence properly.
Okay. And would you say that as a crime scene agent for 10 years at BCI that you became one of the more senior, I don't mean older, but more senior, more experienced crime scene agents there?
That is correct. I was the second most senior when I was in the union.
And would also often fill in for your supervisor when he was not.
Yeah, I was in charge anytime my supervisor was off. So I would fill in for him in making those supervisory duties, assigning cases, reading reports, that type of thing.
Okay. And you indicated you worked at Clark County Sheriff's Office prior to that for 12 years.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
I was a road deputy, went into the detective bureau in 2001, got promoted to sergeant in 2006, and then left in 2008 to go to BCI.
Okay. Lieutenant, I would like to direct your attention to the date of April 22nd of 2016 regarding your work in the rodent homicide case. First of all, you recall that?
I do.
Okay. And can you tell us how did you find out about this? How were you summoned to respond?
As a crime scene agent at BCI, we would take our vehicles home with us that carried all of our equipment we needed to process a crime scene. So on this particular morning, I was on my way to meet a couple of people for breakfast. I'd left my house. We were meeting at 9 o'clock, so it was prior to that. I get a phone call from my supervisor that said he needed agents to respond, crime scene agents to respond to Pike County. And at the time, we were told of 2 victims at the initial notification. During my conversations with my supervisor, it had went to 5 victims. So additional manpower from crime scene was called to respond. And then we met at the Piketon Police Department was where everybody was going to meet up prior to going to the actual crime scenes. And then by the time we all get there to Piketon, that's when we learned that we had 8 total victims with 4 different crime scenes.
Okay. And when you met there, first of all, was it just crime scene agents or were there other individuals also kind of meeting at that location?
It was primarily crime scene agents to start off, but there were other agents that were filtering in as the day went on, and some initial responded as well. Special investigations or SIU was as a unit at BCI that assists law enforcement with actually investigating the cases. Some of those agents had responded. There was also some narcotics agents that had responded. Some cyber crimes agents had responded. So it was a mix throughout the day of different divisions within BCI.
Okay. And you touched on something there that is it true that sometimes BCI is just called in to help process a crime scene and not assist with any other part of the investigation?
That's correct. We have done that many occasions where the crime scene unit will get called to do nothing but evidence collection and crime scene processing, and no other units at BCI will assist in the investigation, just crime scene itself.
Okay. But then in other instances, special investigations, SIU is asked to assist as well.
That's correct.
And the cyber unit, sometimes they work alongside you if, for instance, you retrieve some devices that need processed further.
Right. They analyze anything electronic that may contain evidence. So it was nothing for them to come out with us on a scene. And they would either point out electronic stuff for us to collect, or they would collect it themselves. So we worked with them quite frequently.
Okay. Can you tell me, how are you notified by a particular county that they need your assistance?
There is an 800 number that you could call BCI 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that goes to a radio room or a dispatch center. And then they will take the initial information from the law enforcement agency, and then they will notify whichever supervisor of the unit needs to be notified. For instance, with crime scene, we had a north supervisor and a south supervisor. I was assigned to Southern Ohio. So my supervisor was different than the northern unit. So depending on where the call was in the state, depending on which supervisor got called, then the supervisor would call the agent.
Okay. And who was your supervisor at that time?
It was Gary Wilgus at the time.
Okay. And were you assigned to process one of the scenes in this case?
I was assigned to process 3122 Union Hill Road. And that was where Dana, Chris Jr., and Hannah were located.
Okay. And was that sometimes referred to by the investigators as scene 3?
That's correct. Scene 3 was, there was what we did internally for keeping track of everything purposes is we had scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and scene 4. And I was assigned scene 3.
Okay. And those numbers were basically based off of the order in which the various crime scenes were discovered?
That is correct. Yes.
where you can see it. Are you able to see it?
Yep.
Vantage point.
Yeah.
Okay, this is State's Exhibit C 434. Can you tell us, Lieutenant, if you recognize that location?
Right, that's the property, an aerial view of the property located 3122 Union Hill Road.
Okay. And that is in fact the scene that you processed that day.
That is correct.
Did you have another agent with you helping you to process that scene?
Yes, Special Agent Perry Roser was assisting me there at the scene.
Okay. And did each of the scenes get two agents to process the
Yes,
scene? Okay.
yes.
And was there a lead agent designated as to each scenes as well?
Yes, we did that oftentimes, just not in this case, but in other cases, there would be more than one crime scene agent assigned to a particular scene. There was a lead agent assigned and then an assisting agent. In this particular case, I was the lead agent for scene number 3.
Okay. And can you tell us, after having received your assignment at the Piketon Government Center or Police Department, what did you do at that point?
Once we got our assignments, it was all pretty much simultaneous. We went to the actual property, Special Agent Roser and I, and we were met there by law enforcement, uniformed law enforcement that had the scene secured. And basically, they kind of pointed a few things out from the outside. And we walked around the property. They showed us a few things. We had a search warrant that was drafted and signed by a judge before we entered the residence before processing. So we started on the outside, taking photographs, and then moved to the inside.
Okay. And what information, if any, did you have about the number of victims and what their status was?
Very basic information at the beginning, that we had 3 victims. Each were in their beds, in a bedroom, in the house, 3 separate rooms. The responding deputies, or the deputies that secured everything, said it appeared they had been shot. All victims had been shot. So with that was the basic information that we had at the time.
Okay. And you indicated that there was also some items that were pointed out to you on the outside of that residence.
Correct.
Do you remember what kinds of things those were?
There were a couple cigarette butts that were on the side, next to the sidewalk leading up to the entrance
Okay,
of the
Mo,
house.
I just did a quick
Around in the
search of
backyard,
the
there
Googles,
was a $5 bill
and
that was
I
just
can't
laying in
find
the
a
grass.
BCI. I mean, a
Those were
OBI
the three
in
most
for Ohio.
important items
I
that we found outside.
believe that
Okay.
the BCI
And you indicated that you had to wait until you got the search warrant to begin your
Is,
actual processing of the scene.
what
Do you
other
recall approximately what
states
time you
have
started
that are above the
processing
state
that scene?
police. Like,
I
so
think
Texas has
approximately it was 2:30
the Texas Rangers, right? So I think that's what BCI is. I can't find an Ohio Bureau of
And
Investigation.
can you tell us, Lieutenant, when you're
I
processing
can only
a
find
scene,
BCI.
first of all, do you start on the outside and then go in?
Generally, yes. We try to do it the same way each time. And obviously, you can't do it the same way every time with every scene because
And they work with the Attorney General,
you
Bureau
have
of Criminal
different,
Investigation. I believe that's their
things that make
agency
you alter what
above
you do, but different variables. But
local law
this
enforcement.
particular case, yes.
Because when I
we started
Google
from the outside,
OBI, I
photographed
get
everything on the
Ohio
outside, and then we moved to the inside,
Bureau
photographing everything
of
on the inside.
Investigation. I
before
mean,
any evidence
Oklahoma
collection.
State Bureau of
We photographed the
Investigation,
scene
not
as it is
Ohio.
upon
And
our
also,
arrival. So that's how
um,
I saw it, and those are the photographs that I take.
Okay.
an
And so
OB
you
belt
take them
as
before you
part of a
manipulate or-
kimono.
Or
Yep.
collect or mark anything.
That is correct.
Okay. And when you are processing, excuse me, for instance, the outside of a scene, do you have a particular
You're
order you go
welcome.
in generally?
Generally, I like to do things
Every state
clockwise
has an
around the
agency that
property,
is above the
or even
local
if
law
I'm inside,
enforcement, but
unless
below
something
federal.
dictates otherwise, I like to work in a clockwise
Like
fashion, when I can.
Tennessee is
Okay.
TBI, Colorado is the
And do you
CBI,
recall if that is how you
Oklahoma is the OBI,
process this scene?
Texas
or I
has
guess
the
I should say
Rangers.
photo documented it, right?
Um,
Because you're
Yes.
taking pictures as
Te-
you're walking
I said
around.
That's
Tennessee, right?
correct.
TBI.
And it was in a clockwise manner.
Okay. I'm going to, you should, when that comes up, it should show.
Nonstop Mom is an Ohioan.
No.
Maybe she, I know she works, so she's probably just listening along with us. But when she gets a moment, maybe she can either confirm or, say, no, Jen, again, you're wrong. No, not again, but you know what I mean.
There it is.
wrong,
So
wrongity
there
wrong.
would be a picture that appears,
But I think that's
on
right.
that screen in front of you that is also above you on the bigger screen in the courtroom.
Remember,
And what I would like
don't
to do
be touching it
is
rough.
show you a photograph, ask you to identify it if
Okay.
you can.
Thank you,
And
Gail.
then I'll ask you generally where on that property you are.
BCI is their
and there is a pointer right there beside your microphone.
agency that is above individual city, local law enforcement, but below the FBI.
States Exhibit C1, 7639.
So that's a photograph of the mailbox and the front of the property, and it's out. The mailbox is out in this area by the road, and then the photograph would have been taken from this pointing back towards the house.
Okay.
And it shows 3122 on the mailbox and the name road.
Okay. So basically identifies that location for your identification purposes for future use and for purposes such
Correct.
as this. Okay. And then C2, which is 7640.
That's a photograph from standing.
And there you have it.
In the front yard area, right outside of the house, and it's a photograph that
Thank you, Nonstop
is
Mom.
taken towards the red barn, and it shows the crime scene tape that's up, and also 2 vehicles that are there.
Okay. C3, which is 7641.
Again, that's standing in the front yard area of the property, and that's taken back, photograph that's taken back towards the red barn, towards the front of the property. Again, showing the yellow crime scene tape and the vehicle in front of the barn.
Okay. C4, which is 7642.
And again, this is standing in the front yard area of the house and then taking a photograph of the front of the property, of the house itself, from in front of it.
Okay. And C6, which is 7644. Can you tell us what that is?
That's a Bud Light, aluminum Bud Light bottle that one of the deputies had pointed out as the scene was being secured, and it's in the front yard area, close to the road.
Okay. And is that orange cone something you would have placed there, or was that already placed there?
No, that was already there.
Okay. For them to point out to whoever and
That's
just
correct.
processing the scene. Okay. C7, which is 7645.
Again, this is just another photograph, moving, again, starting, photographing here and then moving clockwise around the property. This is a photo of the front of the house. And it also shows the crime scene tape.
Okay.
Well,
C10. which is 7648.
Nobody is as extra as Texas. We don't even use the term crime scene
This is a
investigation. No,
photograph,
no.
Showing from,
We call them the
moving around the
Rangers.
property. This is
We're
showing this side
extra,
of the
extra.
house.
and, the crime scene tape that's up around.
Thank you, Corky.
C12 is 7650. And again, you're just kind of working your way around in that clockwise fashion that you talked about.
That's correct.
Okay.
Still in the front yard, taking a photograph of the house, front of the house.
C15, which is 7653.
So this is a photograph. It would be over on this side of the residence, photographing that backside or the side of the house.
Also, know,
That shows the
just for your own
addition that's on the
personal
in the
knowledge of
residence.
Jen Lou and
you
her
can
inner
still see part of the
workings.
front of the residence along with that.
The
Yeah,
words "you're
Basically,
right,"
it's this corner. I'm photographing this
Just
corner of the
warm, the cold,
House.
Okay.
black,
C18,
dark
which is
recesses of my heart
7656.
and my soul. I love hearing the words "you're right."
Can you tell us what we're looking at there?
Yeah, that's standing on further back in this area. And
Correct.
Taking a photograph of that's
And
the-
Chuck
this
Norris is one of
end
us.
side end of the house here. is what
So
that's
there's
showing.
that.
And that's further back in the backyard towards
Do y'all have a
That
Chuck
fence
Norris? I
is,
don't think so.
separates kind of the front from the back, and that's getting closer to the backyard.
Okay. And then C17, which is 7655.
Again, that's the fence that runs on the property, and it runs on the backside
Of the property, so it's back in here. It goes right around in there.
And then C21, which is 7659.
And that's a photograph that's actually in the back of the, it's on the side here, but it's further back in this area and across the fence.
Okay. And there appears to be a white bucket, I believe, in kind of the mid to left area of that photograph. Do you
Yes.
see that object?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know what that is?
Yeah, that was placed there. That's what's covering the $5 bill that the deputies pointed out to us.
Okay, and again, that was placed there before your arrival.
That's correct.
So that they could show it to you.
Yes.
C22, which
Let
is
me just say this.
7660.
I don't know a whole lot about Kay Ivy's. I
I'm
don't have
moving-
like an opinion
I'm
about
still
her
in the
policy,
backyard,
right? Because I
and
don't
I'm
talk
moving
politics.
around,
But what I will say is,
Getting further back.
I really
to
love
get
the way
the
that
rear of
Kay
the residence.
Ivy speaks.
Okay, and again, you can kind of through those
I just like
trees
her voice.
on the left-hand side of that photograph.
She
kind
sort
see
of
the-
has
the
a,
Right.
garage slash.
Yes.
she reminds
you can
me
see
a little bit
this
of
side.
Foghorn Leghorn in her cadence,
C23,
but she
which is
doesn't have that,
7616.
she doesn't repeat things like Foghorn Leghorn does, the chicken, you know.
And can you tell us what that is?
Again, that's in the backyard.
I love Kay.
Back part of the house.
So I'm in this area here behind the house and I'm photographing.
As Southerners,
The
as
this area
Alabamans,
of the
I just
house
love
and
the way she
property.
talks.
Okay, and then C27, 7665.
That's more of a in the backyard there, and that's more of a mid-range type photograph, not too close, not too far away, showing the white bucket.
Okay, and then C28, 7666.
That's a photograph of what's under the white bucket, and it's a $5 bill laying on the top of the grass.
Okay, So you had, at this point, moved that bucket to observe that.
That's
what
correct.
was underneath it. Okay.
Yes.
C29, which is 7667.
So this is, again, standing in the backyard, and this is the back of the house. So
Why are we not
I'm
being shown
photographing
these?
from this area here, and I'm shooting the back of the residence.
Okay. And C32, which is 7670. Can you tell us where we are now?
That's still in the backyard. I'm photographing the rear of the residence, and you can also see I'm getting further towards the red barn here on this side. And this is just showing an overview of what the back of the residence, the yard, fences, that type of thing.
And again, that's for whatever evidentiary value it may hold. At that time, I assume you don't know if it holds any evidence.
No, and it's for documentation purposes as well. To be able to document it as it is when we're there.
Okay. And then C42, which is
Yes.
7680.
See, different parts of the South, for those that don't know, even within the state itself,
Where we are now.
have
Yeah,
different
we're in front of this. We're right here.
draws,
at this
right? Their
red
twang
vehicle,
is different.
right here.
There's a different
And
and
we're standing
distinct
in front of
twang
the
for people
red barn
like me
on the
who are
driveway.
from North
And
Texas
that's a
versus
photograph
East
of a
Texas
red
versus South
Jeep that was in the
Texas,
driveway
Central
behind.
Texas, and West Texas.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've made it
We have different
all the way
draws.
around that house almost.
In
Correct.
Alabama,
Point. Okay. And C43
they have a different
is 7681.
Southern draw than even Texas. It's a slower
Again,
draw.
that's that same
They
Jeep,
talk
and you can
slower,
see
and
the,
there's a more
house
enunciation
on the
to
left.
it. It's
That's
very,
correct. It's a photograph just showing the
it's
back.
just different.
of the
And then
Jeep.
there's the Louisiana draw. And even
been
in
taken from
Louisiana,
this
different
area,
parts of
and you
Louisiana
can
have
see
a
the house
different
in the
twang.
background.
And
Okay.
oh, you have a Mimi?
C49,
I
which is
like them.
7687.
I'm gonna have to start using that one instead of Meemaw, because I like Mimi and Meemaw too.
That's a silver
But
vehicle
Mimi,
that was
for
parked in
me,
front of the barn, and that's a photograph.
I don't even know
from
if
this
it's really
side,
a Spanish term,
over
like
here,
a Spanish word, because I'm Mexican.
documenting
But
the
my
passenger
mom
side of the vehicle.
and dad, my dad is Mexican. He
And you
says
did also document
he's the one that taught us go
That's
mimis, which
correct.
means go night-nights or go night-night. You know what I mean? And
C49,
but I
which is
think it is
7687.
a slang of
Oh, that's
of a word in
slang.
Spanish, but I don't know what, because
I
I don't know.
Which is
I don't. Spanish is
7687.
not my. English is my only language, and I only know a little bit of Spanish. I can cuss in Spanish, just so y'all know.
It's standing in the driveway here, and it's standing. At
Yes,
the
Tony,
front
very fried
driver's
green
side
tomatoes. It's a
corner of the
slower
vehicle,
draw.
Kind of a
I like it.
mid-range overall photograph, just showing the driver's side of the vehicle.
Okay. And C51, which is 7689.
That's standing in the driveway closer to the silver car back in this area. And all that is a photograph which documents the positioning of both of the vehicles in relation to the barn.
Okay. And then C52, which is 7690.
So again, this is an overall photograph standing in the driveway behind back in this area. And
I don't
that is the
understand why we're not
photograph
allowed
showing
to
the
look at these
relationship
pictures.
between
This
the
is
red car
outside.
and the residence.
Okay. And then also C53. Sorry, 7691.
That's a red vehicle that was it was pulled off the driveway.
I'm a
right in
Grammy,
this area
Tony.
here.
Because let's
And
be
I'm just
honest,
documenting,
it's
uh,
cute,
from the rear
but
driver's
it's
side
also an
on the
award.
license plate number,
And I just like to be
overall
extra.
picture of the driver's side of the vehicle.
So there's that.
Okay. And C55, which is 7693.
That's the same Pontiac that's sitting right here in the driveway. And this is a photograph that I'm taking from the passenger side front corner. So I'm standing over here in this grassy area.
I'm sure it's a fantastic
Taking the photograph back
photograph that
towards the
you've
house.
taken, but
Okay.
can't really
and
comment on it
C58, which is 7696.
due to the fact that I can't see it.
That's a photograph back from this grassy area back in here. And it's just an overall photograph showing where the vehicles are at in the driveway.
Okay. And then C59, which is 7697.
So that's back here again in this grassy area off the driveway. And that's a photograph just showing the residents and the driveway and the vehicles. It's basically made it all the way around the house at that point.
Okay, we'll just have to take your word for it, sir.
And do you ultimately collect items from the outside of that residence?
Yes.
And did you collect, I believe you indicated that the deputies had showed you a cigarette butt or butts,
Yes,
I
there
guess,
were-
plural?
Yeah, there were two of them.
Okay, and did you collect both of those items?
Yes, I did.
C65. $7703.
That photograph.
I don't know
there
who's working the
is,
camera today, but
from
bruh, are you taking a nap? What's happening here?
this little grass area between the driveway and the sidewalk right here. So it's in this leading up to, in the photograph, the entry is right here to the house. So this sidewalk leads up to a porch and then you enter the house. So this cigarette butt, I have it marked as item number 1. That's what the yellow placard signifies. So I've got it marked as item number 1, and it's in the grass area leading up to the residence.
Obviously, it's
And
not
is it
pertinent
typical
that
for
the
you to kind
audience,
of
the
take
viewing
that,
audience, be able to
broader
see
view picture
it's
first to demonstrate
honestly
where
the
an item was
jury is the
recovered
ones
from?
that need to
Right.
see, but
Usually,
still,
typically on any type of item that we collect as evidence, there'll be 3 different photographs taken of each item. It'll be an overall photograph, which is what we're seeing here, showing the general relation to the scene itself. There'll be a mid-range photograph, which will move in a little bit closer, maybe getting a little bit more detail, more focused on the item itself, and then a close-up photograph of the item, which will be centered solely on the item.
well,
and
now I
showing
want to see it,
characteristics of
Tony.
that
You're
item
going to have
versus
to
the scene.
figure out a way to share that with
So
the
to
ward.
that
We need to
end,
see for
C61, which is
research purposes.
7699.
That's the same item number 1, that cigarette butt that's there in the grass. And this is what you would consider a mid-range photograph, where we've gotten narrowed in on the actual item itself, and not so broad as the overview.
And then C62, which is 7700.
And again, that's the close-up photograph, and what it's showing is the item itself. And the placard does have a scale on it, and the photograph will show us the brand and the if any characteristics that you might be able to catch on it.
Okay. And did you, talk to us about, now you've marked it, you've taken those photographs, what do you do next with that item?
Once it's been marked, photographed, if there's a reason to take a measurement, so this is at this point, we would take a measurement. In this particular instance, there was no real reason to take a measurement because we had a reference. It was by the sidewalk. It was leading up to the house. So the final step is to collect it. And when it's collected, it's packaged in an envelope and sealed and initialed.
Okay, and who does that?
That would be either myself or Special Agent Roser, but in this particular situation, it was myself.
Okay. And then after you have collected it, put it in an envelope.
Oh, you can't be
marked
getting your
it,
white
and
pants
sealed it,
dirty
what do you do with those? items that
for
you collect?
church on Easter Sunday. No, ma'am, you
varies,
cannot. That is,
depending on the situation. Some agencies that we process.
oh, I
crimes
can't
for,
wait to see it.
they
They
will
need
want
to
us
come
to turn
on
the evidence
a
over to them.
nonstop, Mom.
In
This
this particular
is upsetting to
situation,
your girl
we had
here.
other
I want to
BCI
see.
agents involved, and they were going to assist in
I
the
don't want to see any of the
investigation,
gruesome
and,
pictures, but
ultimately, the items were going to go to the crime lab, or some of them were going to go to the crime lab. We took possession of these items and we stored them in our temporary evidence until they were submitted to the lab.
Okay, so in this instance, unlike in some other instances, BCI actually took possession of the property as opposed to the requesting agency.
That is correct.
Okay. And that was based mostly because they were also invited to help investigate too.
That's correct.
Do the
They
investigation.
were called to BCI as a whole, as an agency. Every division was asked to help in this investigation, so requested to help in this investigation. So it just made sense for us to retain the evidence as well.
Okay. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit C405. If you could just look at that envelope and tell us what that is.
That is an envelope that I have marked as evidence number 1, and it says one cigarette from the front yard. It's got my name on it, and it's been sealed and initialed.
Okay. And are there also markings on that envelope, Lieutenant, that would indicate that it was also sent to the lab?
That is correct. It also has a tag on the top here that shows that it was submitted to the lab and it gives the date and the case number for the laboratory.
Okay. And Your Honor, I believe the parties have a stipulation regarding this C405, specifically that this is a cigarette butt identified as BCI item number 1. Also lab number 1 was sent to the lab for DNA testing. There was insufficient data on this item for DNA comparison purposes.
Mr. Parker?
That's correct.
The jury is instructed that the jury is to accept the stipulation to be established as fact, as fully as if it had been established through testimony in the court.
And Lieutenant, I believe you testified that there was an additional cigarette butt that you collected from this scene.
That's correct.
Okay, C72, which is 7710. Can you tell us if you recognize anything in that photograph?
Yes, this photograph is an overall photograph, and it's showing placard number 2, and it's just off of the front porch of the residence in the grass there.
Okay. And C74, which is 7712. And again,
That's placard number 2, which is denoting the cigarette butt. That's more of an over mid-range photograph, and it's there in the grass by the front porch.
oh, you know what? I probably
okay,
forgot
and
to turn it all the way up.
C75, which
I
is
did.
7713.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Amelia, for reminding me. I'd
This
be
is a
forgetting.
close-up photograph of that same item, placard number 2, the cigarette butt that's in the front yard by the front porch. Then that's just a close-up photograph.
Okay. And are you able to tell if those are the same brand?
Yes, they are.
Cigarette. Okay. And again, did you collect that item according to your standard operating procedures as far as placing an envelope, marking it, and sealing it?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I forgot to turn it back up.
Going to approach you with what's been marked as State's Exhibit C406.
Did you ask the judge if you could approach?
Sure.
Let us know what that
This is
No
a
problema.
manila envelope that has my name on it, and it's evidence item number 2, and it's a cigarette from the front yard. Like I said, my name's on it. It's sealed, and it also has a laboratory sticker on it to where it was sent to the laboratory.
Okay. And Your Honor, once again, I believe we have a stipulation regarding State's Exhibit C406. Again, it is a cigarette butt identified as BCI item number 2. Lab number 6 was sent to the lab for DNA testing. Hannah Roden's DNA was on this item.
Mr. Parker,
That's correct.
If you email it to me,
the jury was
Tony,
instructed to accept the
you won't
stipulation
have
just
to,
given
like,
be established as fact as far
make
as if it had been established through evidence here in the court.
the link public. You know what I'm
And
saying? Like, you
Lieutenant,
can
are
make
those
it,
the
you
only
can
2
set
cigarette
the
butts that
video
you
to
found and collected at that scene?
private.
That is correct.
And then anybody that you share the link with can see it.
And did you
but not
ultimately also collect
the
that
whole
$5 bill that the
YouTube.
deputies had
You know what I mean?
Isolated for you?
Yes, that was, I believe, item number 3.
So just
Okay.
not random
C
people can't just go over to your
271,
channel and
which is
just click it.
7911.
Okay, if you don't care, that's cool. However you want to do it. But if you email me the link, I can
And can you tell us what that is?
That's your, that is an overall photograph showing the placard number 3 next to the $5 bill, and basically just an overview showing the identification with the placard.
Okay, and then C272, which is 7912.
This is moving in closer on the item, closer to the mid-range area of the photograph of the item. And again, it's item number 3. It's a $5 bill. It's photographed from the same angle.
Okay, and then C276, which is 7916. I believe that will be our close-up.
That is a close-up photograph. Item number 3, the $5 bill. It's just showing the item itself and that it was a folded $5 bill.
Okay, and again, you collected that item in the same manner that you collected items 1 and 2, is that
That's
correct?
correct. Yes.
And Lieutenant, when you are saying that BCI then secures it, do you have a secure area to secure evidence in?
Yes, we do.
Is it that
we
same
have
warehouse that y'all left
an
that stuff
evidence
unattended
room
in?
actually in
Just asking.
BCI that we can store evidence. We also have a temporary evidence. So like if you're out in the middle of the night or on a weekend outside of normal business hours, you can put evidence in. It's locked. It's has controlled access, and it's also under video surveillance. So it's pretty secure.
Okay.
Are there nonstop,
Kenny,
Mom?
what's been marked as C407.
I do have
and
some
once
thoughts
again, if
on
you could
that.
Please let us know what that is.
This is also.
But I'm going to
manila
wait
envelope.
until we go to the break, and then
and
I'll talk
it's
about
got my
that.
name on
Because
it,
I don't
the
want to
date,
talk over, you know what I'm
and
saying?
It's a U.S. currency, one $5 bill from 3122 Union Hill Road in the backyard. It's also got a laboratory
I'm getting good.
sticker on it from where it was submitted to the laboratory, and it's sealed.
All right, Tony.
Okay.
I'll
And
check
the
it out
writing
after
that
this. Okay,
appears
babe?
on that white label there, which kind of gives a description of the details of the item that's contained within.
Yep.
How is that generated?
That's generated, this evidence what I was reading off of there on the front here. That's generated through a computer program that we take on, that we had on scene, and we type our evidence into
I can't wait to see
basically
it
an
though. I bet
iPad,
it's adorable.
and then it maintains a list for us and the item numbers, the dates, who collected it, and then we can print that out as an inventory sheet, and we print this label off while we're on scene to put actually on the packaging of the item. So it's generated by us.
Now that is
Cranky.
handy.
Okay. And Your Honor, I believe the parties have a stipulation regarding this item. States Exhibit C407, which is a $5 bill found in the backyard of 3122 Union Hill Road, identified as BCI item number 3, lab number 24, was sent to the lab for DNA testing. There was insufficient DNA for comparison on this item for comparison purposes.
Mr. Parker.
That's correct, Joe.
The jury is instructed to accept the stipulation that was just given as being established as fact, as fully as if it had been established through testimony here in the courtroom.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lieutenant, did you also photograph the inside of that red garage/barn structure?
Yes, I did.
I'm not going to get you in trouble with your mother-in-law, am I, Tony?
States
If I watch it
C78,
and if we
which is
decide later on it's
7716.
okay to show here on the channel, because I don't want to. I don't
Can you
want
tell us what we're looking
to.
at in that photograph?
That's
Get in
a
between
photograph of the entry door.
A mother-in-law and mother-in-law
walk-in
and
entry
her
door that gets
daughter-in-law.
you
That
into
is
this red barn
no,
here.
thank
And
you.
it's on this side here of the barn. And that's just a photograph, an overview photograph showing the door, and that
You know,
basically
those
I'm
are
getting ready to
those
walk
are
in that barn.
situations where my policy
Okay.
is
And when you
My name
walked
is
into
Paul, that's
that
between y'all.
barn, was there first a kind of a smaller
Okay.
area that was
and my
partitioned
name's
off?
Bennett,
Yes.
and I ain't in it.
C77, which is 7715. And can you tell us what that is?
Right, that's the as you enter through the entry door, that portion was concreted, and it was a small portion of the barn, but the floor was concreted, and there was a wall separating it from the other side of the barn.
C82, which is 7720.
What?
And again,
Hold on, y'all. I'm
that's
looking at Twitter.
still
and this-
standing close to the entry door. The entry door would be behind us in this photograph, but that's just showing different angles of that section of the barn.
And C81, which is 7719. And again, Lieutenant, are you working your way around this room with your camera just to kind of give a kind of a 360 view of that?
That's correct. It's just to document overview photographs to document everything in that
Oh, bless it.
area.
So,
And
you
again,
know
at
how
this
we have,
time,
hold
you do
on,
not
I'm gonna
know if
turn
there's
this
anything
down
of
a little bit,
evidentiary
just so
value
you
in
guys
this
know, because
location,
I
but
was
you're
talking out
documenting
loud
it
while
in the
looking
event
at
that
Twitter.
does become
So,
something that's relevant.
you know that the
Yeah,
Hurricane
one of the
Fiona's still, doing
Parts
whatever
of
she's
crime
doing,
scene
and there's
processing,
another
once you've
I don't
documented
even think it's
everything,
named
you've collected
yet.
everything that
tropical
is,
invest or whatever they call
that you've
that.
identified.
So AccuWeather has done
we always
released
search
a
everything.
picture on their
So
Twitter
eventually this barn was going to
feed
get searched
where it's
anyway.
in
So
the
I'm documenting it before that
it
happens.
moves. Here, I'll tell you exactly.
Same as we would a
Hold on
house,
just a second.
garage, anything. So.
Let me go back.
Okay.
Let me go back to the
C2
Twitters.
or C79
All right.
rather.
So how they have it is it moving into the Gulf of
That's again,
Mexico.
in the barn, in the
on Sunday and
I think I referred to it
becoming
as kind of the finished
a
portion
category
on the south
1.
wall
And then by
concrete.
6, is
But
that
that's
6
a
or 8?
picture of the
8 a.m.
treadmill
Wednesday,
that's in
they've
that
got
section
it,
of the barn.
And then C93.
just a little south, and it's in the Gulf, but they have it at a category 3, and it's a little south and east
Yeah,
of
that,
like my
just showing one of the walls and you'll
sort of
see
part
the
of Florida,
treadmill,
because it's above
handle to the
like the tip
treadmill,
of Florida, which is Miami or
is in
whatever.
the
And
photograph.
there's
And
no
that was just some
I mean,
writing on the
it's,
wall.
there's an argument on Twitter how accurate
It-
that can be
The entry door
because it's
is,
so
if
far
you're looking at
out.
the photograph, the entry door is on the
So,
left-hand side there.
yeah,
So that's the door you would
that's
enter.
that's what I was
That's
looking
correct.
at.
Structure in. Okay.
If it look, the
And
bottom
then
line
you
is this:
also go
if it keeps
into
on track
not-
the way it's been
because
keeping
to go
on
out that
track
door,
and
you
it
would
gets
be,
up into the
a
Gulf, it
14-day
probably will develop
resident.
into a hurricane. But where
Did
it
you
goes
go
from
the
there,
opposite
it's
direction
way
and
too
go
far
into
out
the
to know
larger
that
kind of garage area of
at
the
all,
Yes, I did.
because the Gulf is real warm right now.
C83.
The longer it
7721.
I think it's going to turn into Hermione, and if the longer it plays in the Gulf, the bigger it'll
So
be. It's
this
just
is
the
an
way it is.
overall
There's not a lot of
photograph,
wind shear out there
and
right now. Blah
if
blah
you
blah.
remember
I
where
don't
the
be
doorway
worrying about
was
it.
from the finished portion, this takes you
I'll
out
worry
into
when
the,
they
what I consider
start
the
letting people
unfinished
know that
portion.
it's close.
There's no concrete, it's a dirt floor,
I have
gravel
all my
floor.
preparedness as
It's
much
not
as you can
finished.
prepare.
So
Don't y'all worry about your girl.
this is a photograph from standing at that doorway, overview photograph, showing one portion of that section of the barn.
Okay. And then C85 7723.
Tony, when I first
And again, that's
got with
standing
my
there in the
husband, I had a little
unfinished
bit of a
portion. You
contentious
see there's a
relationship with
same
my
white car we saw
mother-in-law,
in the
but
other photograph. And that's
after
again,
like
just taking overview photographs, documenting everything
got-
that's in that side of the barn.
once I
And
hit my
again, just kind of
mid-20s, it
doing
got
that kind
better
of
because I was
panoramic
18,
Panoramic kind of,
so
yeah,
I was young and thought I
C86
knew
is
everything. And
7724.
I have to give her credit; she was pretty patient with me. I don't know if I would be as
Again, that's the
patient.
same thing. Standing in the unfinished portion, just, we've worked around now about 3/4 of the way documenting.
In fact, I
barn
know I
itself,
wouldn't because I made a
overview
comment one
photographs.
time
Okay.
a couple of years back
uh,
on my on a post that my son
C90,
did, and
which is
it caused
7728.
his then I think they might have been engaged then. It was either his girlfriend or his fiance, my
So
oldest
that's,
son.
again,
She made a comment, which then
moving
made me
further
make.
around
Then
the
I
inside of
responded
the
to that
unfinished area of
comment.
the
Then it
barn.
escalated
That's
into
the
her
backside
mama
or the inside.
making comments, and then
the
it escalated
overhead
even
garage door
further
that you
into
see
her
on the
mama
left there.
private
So there's a door
messaging me.
there on kind of
Yeah,
the
it was a
mid
big thing.
right, just right of mid.
I'm
in
not
that
sorry.
photograph.
I
And
meant
is
what
that
I
the
said,
door
and
that
I
you
wasn't
entered
rude.
from that
I was
That's
just
correct.
blunt.
smaller room?
That would be the entryway and the entry door into the unfinished part. Yes.
Okay. And just for completeness, C91 7729. You've now basically made it back to where you'd started.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
My mother-in-law, I think, knows
Before we
that
go any further,
her son.
do all of the photographs that you have viewed thus far fairly and accurately depict both the outside of that residence?
I don't
and
think
the inside
that
of
my
structure
mother-in-law
as you
is
found it
under
that
any
day,
illusions
on
about
April 22nd of
how her
2006?
son actually
That's
is.
correct.
But she doesn't like to acknowledge it, like she won't,
Lieutenant, did
admit
you
it.
ultimately enter that residence
But I will
as
say
well?
she's
Yes.
pretty fair in that
And again, I
she
believe
does
you testified that
take
you
my
try
side
to do it in a
sometimes, and she
clockwise
does
manner
take his
to the
side
extent that you're
sometimes.
able.
Yes. It's always
I don't
good
really.
to have a plan,
We
but
don't.
sometimes
We've been together
even the
for
best plans, you have to alter them a little bit. So
Okay. And in particular,
geez, let me
was
bust
this
out the
resident somewhat
calculator.
of a
It's either
challenge to that,
27
or
or
was
28 years.
it
Just a
designed
second.
in a
Can't remember.
unique
It's
or
been
different fashion?
It's
it
terrible.
was different in the
It's
fact that it
terrible.
had an addition.
I
on
always
it,
get this
and,
wrong. I'm always the
it
wrong
had
year.
additional bedroom.
So this year was
it wasn't
2027.
your
Next year will be
standardized house
28.
trailer. It had been added on to. There had been bathrooms added, bedrooms added.
Oh,
So,
Shamita.
we basically.
Give her my
made the
number. I'll set her
decision
straight.
based on what some of the processing we had to do in it. We basically started
And I'll bust
in the
out
first bedroom
exhibits.
we came to, which was clear at the end of the house, and then just worked
Tony.
back around to the final bedroom. So it kind of was clockwise, but
I
not
feel like
necessarily.
I,
Before
not
we
that
go any
my
further with that,
future daughter-in-law, because they're not married just yet, but she doesn't actually come to me with stuff, but my son does. And I tell my son when he's wrong. Of course, I feel like,
And can you tell us?
I don't know.
First of all,
I'm the only one that should be able to tell him that he's
is
wrong.
a diagram of
Like if she
the
needs,
interior,
you know what I'm saying? Don't, like, I don't want her
some of the
telling him
general
he's wrong.
evidence
Just come to
locations
me
inside
and I'll tell him.
3122,
I don't know.
Union Hill Drive.
It's hard for me
Okay, and again, that's the scene that you processed on April 22nd.
because I don't want to be
That's correct.
that mother-in-law
On that diagram, again, we've
that
already had
doesn't-
testimony
that
this
doesn't
is
think
not
her
to
son
scale,
does any
that
wrong, or
is
at least won't
That
acknowledge
is
when her
correct. It is
son
not
does
to
any
scale.
wrong. But I also,
But regardless, it does give a general
He's my
layout of
son.
that residence.
Yeah, that's how the residence was
you
laid out.
know, like,
Yes.
I don't want
Okay.
anybody bossing
And
him
on
around.
this
I don't even want to
diagram,
boss
you
him
see
around.
number
But if
one,
anybody's going to boss
two,
him around, it
and
should
number
be
three
me.
That appear to be outside of the residence, is that correct?
Right.
But I'm
what
working
that's
on it. It's a
referring to
developing
are
skill,
The
okay?
items that we collected outside.
having a
the
little
two
hard
cigarette
time
butts and
letting
the $5
go.
bill.
But I'm
Okay,
better than I was.
And Lieutenant, when
Especially
you say
now
that
that
you did the far
they've had a baby.
bedroom,
I'm doing much
can
better.
you tell us which direction you went when you first entered that residence?
So
And
this-
which bedroom are you talking about?
I'm talking about this bedroom here at the very end. That's pretty much
Well-
where we started as far as evidence collection. And then we just worked
As
from
much
this
as I
bedroom
didn't want to become my Nana,
and finished in
a
what
little
we-
bit,
what
I
we
have
labeled as
become
bedroom
my
3.
Nana. I'm a little bit of a chismosa, and
So
it is what it
that
is.
first one that you did was bedroom one.
Hey,
Yes.
5,
and
6,
then,
7,
the
8. Good
second
to
is
see ya.
obviously Bedroom two, and then the final one.
Which
there.
is
Yep.
a gossiper. I can't help it.
And can you tell us, Lieutenant, if
And a little
you
judgy.
walked through that residence first,
I can't help
photo
it.
documenting
I'm trying to be better.
the house as you found it before manipulating anything within the scene and collecting it?
That's correct. The house was documented through photography before any collection of any items from the interior.
I would say on the mother-in-law scale,
C94,
one
which is 7733.
between 1 and 10, obviously 10 being the worst, 10 being like Jane Fonda and Monster-in-Law,
Yes, thank you.
right? I would probably be a
That's a photograph
4
of the front entry door.
most of the
Obviously,
time.
the storm door there opens to the outside. That's the main entrance to get into the residence.
And is that the entry that you used?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's right, Tony.
Um,
If you can't say anything nice, come sit
C95,
next
which
to
is
me.
7734. Can you tell us what that is?
It's hard,
That is a
Amelia.
photograph that shows the, as you stand at the
This
entrance.
is what I've learned.
The main entrance. That is a photograph
When you
that
have boys,
is showing this bedroom here, bedroom number 1.
it's a
So,
different
standing in
proposition
this area,
because when they have
photographing
kiddos,
down this way.
inevitably the grandchildren tend to be
And then
the
C96, which is
girl's mom has
7735.
more access to the grandkids just by
Can you
virtue of
tell
it
us
being
what
her
we are
mother,
looking at and
right?
where you are standing
So I
in
have
the
it both
residence?
ways.
Yeah, this is
I
standing at
have
the entryway.
my
as
son
well,
has
and then this
a
is-
baby now,
this-
and
this
my
is a
daughter
photograph that
has
shows
a baby now,
his
and I
living
have
room area,
far more access
specifically
to my
a chair that was up against
daughter's
that wall.
daughter, my granddaughter,
That's what that
than I
photograph is.
do
An overall
to
photograph.
the granddaughter I
And
have with my son.
C97, which is 7736.
Just the way it is. And I kind of knew that going in.
Again, standing in the entryway.
So I
standing
try
at
not to
the
fight it too
entryway,
much
and
because
then
I just want to
photographing
see the
living room
kids. So I
area,
just try
and
not to rock the
again,
boat too much. You know what I mean?
Just standing in the same spot, but moving the
All right.
camera to capture the room as a whole.
Okay. And C98, which is 7737.
I'll be right back, but I'm going to be
Same thing, this
in
is
the
the living room
chat.
area, but this is standing in this area and then photographing this direction.
Oh, quirky.
Overall
Okay.
photograph.
And C99, which is
That's just-
7738.
I am so sorry because that's just rude. And
And again, that's just another
it's rude,
standing
unacceptable,
here, another
and
overall photograph.
unnecessary. That's petty.
Photographing towards the back, which you see on this diagram, the living room kind of flows into the kitchen.
All
That's
right, I'll be
that's
right back,
showing
y'all,
is
but I'll be
that
in chat.
photograph showing is this area of the living room and the kitchen.
Okay. And then C101, which is 7740.
So
And-
this
Go ahead.
This is a photograph moved in the room, so I'm not at the entryway anymore. I'm on the carpet in this area here. But this is a photograph showing the back wall of the living room, the television, and part of the kitchen.
Okay. And then can you also see to the left of the refrigerator there, a passageway that leads back to, I guess if you can show us what we're looking at there. On the
Right. So the photograph, it shows us this area here. And this is an addition that you enter from the kitchen. The entryway is from the kitchen. That's what you're seeing next to the refrigerator there is the entryway into this addition. And you're also seeing this little hallway right here in the photograph off of the kitchen.
So you can go either direction.
You can go
at
either
that
way.
point.
Yep.
Okay. C103, which is 7742.
This is a photograph standing in the living room, and this is a couch that was along the wall here.
C111, which is 7750. And what are you showing there?
That's a close-up of the locking mechanism on the entry door, the deadbolt and or not the deadbolt, the bolt, and also the handle. That's just to document whether there's any damage or if there's any forced entry that may show up on the door, pry marks, anything like that. That photograph is just to document the state of both the locking mechanisms, the handle, and the door itself in that area.
Okay. And is that something you customarily do when you're processing a crime scene?
Yes.
Where there's been entry made into a residence?
Right, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on a homicide scene or a death scene. It could be a burglary scene, but we'll do the same documentation on the burglary scene.
And again, just to be used for evidence during the investigation to possibly determine points of entry.
Right,
Okay.
if you don't see forced entry or nothing looks like it's been tampered with, you can try to look for other points of entry that may have been used.
Taking you back to C95 again, 7734, just to kind of orient us as we work our way to the right of that front entry.
So this is, again, standing in the entryway. In the photograph, you see the entry to this bedroom, bedroom number 1, and then you see the door to the bathroom, which is right in here.
Okay. And C107, which is 7746.
So that's a photograph standing at the entry door to the bathroom, and that's just a photograph of the bathroom, contents of the bathroom, bathtub, toilet, and sink.
Okay. And Lieutenant, did you ultimately look at that closer? Did you find anything of evidentiary value in that particular room?
No.
And then C104, which is 7743. Can you tell us what we're looking at there?
Yeah, this is moving in from the entryway closer to, from the main entryway to the house into bedroom number 1. That's just an overall photograph showing this doorway, and that I'm moving into bedroom number 1 to start documenting it.
C113, which is 7752. And what are we looking at there?
That is standing at this doorway to bedroom number 1, and that's a photograph straight through. There's a backpack and some clothing that was on the floor there, right here in this area in the bedroom.
Okay. And you should not publish anymore, please. Thank you. C114, which is 7753. Can you tell us what we're looking at there?
That's a photograph of in the room, taking a photograph of the bed from this angle here. Just an overview shot of an overview photograph of the bed.
What number was that?
775.
C122, which is 7761. And again, Lieutenant, can you tell us what we are looking at there?
That is a photograph from the standing in bedroom number 1, close to the foot of the bed on this side. And that's documenting what's in the bed, on the bed, and around the bed.
Okay. And what did you observe to be in that bed?
And there's a deceased white male who he previously been identified by first responders as Christopher Roden Jr. He was laying in bed on his stomach. He was covered by a red comforter, and it appeared that he had been shot multiple times in the head.
C135, which is 7774. Can you tell us what we're looking at there?
We're moving into more of a mid-range photograph, just having not disturbed anything on the bed, just documenting the state of the deceased and what is around him. This is more of a medium-range photograph.
C141, which is 7780. What are you documenting there?
That's that's a close-up, and that's Chris Jr.'s face and head, and that shows how he was laying in the bed. It also shows partially some of the wounds that he suffered in his face and head area.
Okay, you can minimize that, please. And Lieutenant, again, is this how you found Christopher Roden Jr. in his bed when you first entered that residence?
That's how, yes, that's how he was when I first started photographing the residence. Yes.
Did you also document other injuries to the back of his head?
Yes. I took a close-up photograph, and a medium range photograph of, looked like, there's at least one that I could tell at the time, gunshot wound to the back of the head.
Okay. C145, which is 7784. And is that the, I guess, mid-range photograph that you took of?
That's correct. That's Christopher Roden Jr. In his bed, and that's documenting the back of his head as it was that day.
And Lieutenant, from the front of the photograph, the cover looks pulled up more, but clearly here in the back, from the back view, you can tell that part of his back was exposed. The cover was not covering all of his body, correct?
That's correct. That's how you get the blood further down on the shoulder area. There wasn't anything to stop the blood from going there.
Okay. And again, Lieutenant, that was how you found him. You did not manipulate that
No.
blanket or covering at all.
No, that is the state that I saw him in and photographed.
And State's Exhibit C121, which is 7760. Can you tell us what we're looking at there?
That is bedroom number one, or Chris Jr.'s bedroom. And that's a photograph just showing this wall here of the bedroom and the contents of the room.
Okay. And again, just as you've done previously, you're just kind of doing that
Going over.
panoramic view. So that,
That's correct. Just going around the room, documenting everything using the camera.
okay. And again, that helps also for relational purposes, I presume, if you see one of the items that's in the previous photo, and then you can tell
Yes.
kind of contextually where you
Yeah,
are.
it's good for orientation purposes. If you're a couple years down the road having to recall your memory, if you do it the same way each time, then
Dear
you know
nonstop
what-
mom,
how
please
it
get
looks
out of
like.
my head because I
Okay.
clicked the
And
unmute
referring
button
you to kind of in that back corner, there's a
just
door
to
open
say
that's
the same
closest to the
thing.
bed.
Yes,
Can you tell
Not
us
a
what that is?
single
I believe that was a
objection
closet.
raised yet.
Okay.
And now they're getting to the graphic pictures,
State's
obviously.
Exhibit C120, which is 7759.
Perhaps they're reserving their objections for potential
So that
autopsy
photograph
photos.
is standing again in bedroom number one, but pointing the camera out back towards the living room and photographing it that way.
And C119, which is 7758.
Kind of a medium range photograph of that backpack that we saw in one of the earlier photographs. That's on the other side of it, and it shows a pair of boots that were also in bedroom number one.
Okay. And C127, which is 7766.
I'm guessing they're not going to have a morning break because they started late.
That's at the corner. We're still in bedroom number one, but that's
So-
at this corner of the bed here.
I don't
close
want to
the wall.
interrupt this, but I kind of have
Close
to.
to the
So I'm
wall
going to
and
stop
kind of
sharing now.
between the bed and the closet.
Between the
Is that
bed and the
fair?
closet.
Because I typically like to just stream. I like to make the streams about 2 hours, maybe a little more, because it's hard to go back and watch, these long streams, right? Especially, I mean, if you're just trying to get you know what I mean. So, but I did want to go back and touch, and plus I have stuff I have to do. So I did want to go back and touch on um, your question, Nonstop Mom. Let me scroll up so I can get to it because I meant to star it, but then I forgot. Okay. So I've been spending some time pondering this very, very question because I kind of, there's part of me that like gets it. And then there's part of me that sort of has an eyebrow raised because obviously I can't know all things about all crimes and the way that they were handled, etc. Right. But when something like a crime where the homes of the victims. Now, obviously, a brick and mortar home is going to be difficult to seize, right? Obviously, you can't pick it up and store it. You could a pier and beam home. They move pier and beam homes all the time, but a mobile home is I mean, hello, it's right there in in the kind of home it is. It's literally mobile, meaning it can be moved, right? So obviously, that would make it easier. But what I'm curious about is why? To what end would this be necessary? Because as we're hearing, you know what? I don't know, but I would imagine it is something that is known, Nonstop Mom. And I'm going to look into it. Let me write that down um, so that I remember. Hold on. Give me just a second. So initially I thought, so let's make a timeline just so let's just start from the beginning. All right. So these crimes occurred, as we know, um, between April 21st and 22nd of 2016, and the homes were not moved until May 12th of 2016. So about 3 weeks, give or take, 10 days shy of a month. So what I'm curious about is why this occurred, because as we're listening, now we're up to crime scene number 3, which would be Dana, Hannah Roden, and Chris Jr., where they were found. As we're hearing the testimony from the various BCI agents, which I have to say, I think that it was incredible, and not incredible, that's not the right. I think that it was the correct call to put a different BCI special agent as the lead in each of the crime scene. I think that that was a smart move because it later on down the line, it's it's hard. I mean, you can certainly raise the theory of mishandling of evidence, but it's a much more difficult issue to have a jury believe when it's handled this way. But anyway, going back to the way that the evidence was collected at these various crime scenes, to me, it's give it the appearance is, and I believe this to be accurate, that the evidence was collected in a very, very meticulous manner. Even they went so far as to not move the bodies for a very, very long time. I mean, typically when you think about um, crime scene investigation, okay, typically what happens is obviously, the scene is processed, which is, photographing, collecting of evidence, yada yada yada. But bodies are removed from the scene fairly early on, right? And the thought behind that is to preserve them, right? Because you can't stop the body's natural process of decomposition, but you can slow it obviously by putting it by refrigerating the body. And then, so they didn't do that in this case, right? I mean, they did not really um move the bodies until they were just about done processing the scenes, all of them, right? So that in and of itself is suggestive that they were meticulous in processing these crime scenes, right? So what the only thing that I can think of that would be the reason for them moving and then storing the homes is perhaps based on early preliminary testing and the results of those tests, because looking at the photographs of some of the homes, they were cluttered. Perhaps the thought was the best that we don't want. What if we need to go back and collect something else? And we don't want the family members going through the homes because obviously there's a process to dealing with belongings right after a person passes away, whether it's natural or unnatural causes, right? I mean, there's certain things that you have to do. And so perhaps the thinking was that obviously the majority of evidence pertaining to the crimes themselves, I should say, were inside of the homes. The thought was, let's let's move the trailers, let's store the trailers so that should we need to go back and collect more evidence based on lab results or something else that comes up, perhaps a suspect, like a potential suspect comes in and maybe confesses or something, that the chain of custody for items collected after the initial process of the scene would not be in question. I mean, yeah, that's the problem. That is a definite problem. And I need to go back and look at the timeline of when they released the scene, because I do remember there being testimony that in the early days after the crime, and I can't tell you how long it was because I have to go back and listen, but in the early days following the crime, that the homes were secured. But I don't know how long they were secured, between, okay, what I don't know is when were they secured the entire time between April 22nd and May 12th? And if not, how much time was allowed in between there? Because I do agree that again, the evidence collected from an unsecured crime scene and then, collected and then processed and then used, it could be potentially problematic and could be potentially contested. So I'm going to research while in between now and tonight and get those answers for you so that we can talk about it. And also, yeah, I'm very curious about this right here. He stood up, he was going to object, yada, 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 to every single photo. But it sounded to me like more like what he was objecting to were the autopsy photos. And the only reason I say that is because he talked about, he referenced them, like the shaved head and this, that, and the other. So I think that he intends to object to the autopsy photos rather than the crime scene photos. I think that he sees the way that the judge has been, that ruled on his motion, right, and that it was overruled, and that the judge wants him to object each and every time. So I think what he's reserving his objections for are the autopsy photos, because those are the ones that he specifically referenced as being gruesome in his argument. So perhaps that's what he's doing. I don't know, because I do understand his argument, but I also understand the state's argument back, right? Their response. And I I I hope that the state does what they say that they're going to, what they implied, which is that it is contested whether or not George Wagner was a shooter at any of these crime scenes. All of them, one of them, any of them, right? Because that's essentially what they implied during their rebuttal, right? So I'm curious about how this is going to go, because the crime itself is gruesome, and there's they certainly have, at this point, enough crime scene evidence, right? They don't have to play dirty pool. They don't have to try and elicit an emotional conviction. Does that make sense? Like, you want the jury to convict solely based upon the evidence provided in the courtroom, but you don't want that evidence provided to, how do I want to put this? You want them to weigh the evidence, but you don't want them to base their decision on the evidence based off of emotion, right? Because, and I think that's really what the defense is really arguing there, is that, they're not contesting the cause of death, the manner of death. They're not contesting that they were shot multiple times. But what they are saying is, look, you don't have to put, 11 billion gruesome photos in front of the jury, because we're they were under the impression that George Wagner is being tried as not a principal, but being complicit in the crime, right? Meaning he didn't pull the trigger. But then the state's response, it's very confusing and interesting in that, because I didn't actually get from her opening statement Thank you, Amelia. I didn't get from her opening statement that that the state intended to prove that George Wagner was a shooter. In fact, when she went over the counts against George Wagner and the special circumstances that apply to each count, the specifically the first 8 counts, which are the murder charges, right? Which are the counts of murder. I didn't think, eh, because when you read those 8 counts, the special circumstances are um, part or acted in, how did they put it? Was I forget how they put it, because at the end of it is with a with another party to bring about the death, to cause or bring about the death of each family member. I think they used consort was the term, acted in consort with another party or parties. So reading that the way that she did, to me, seemed like what she wanted the jury to understand is that George Wagner doesn't have to be shown to have held a gun in his hand and fired the weapon, and that the shot or shots that he fired were or would have likely resulted in the death of any one of the 8 people in order for them to be able to find him guilty of one or all 8 counts, right? So that's what it appeared to me. So now I'm kind of confused by her rebuttal. And I'm only talking about the legality of it, because make no mistake, I believe that George Wagner, George Washington Wagner the Fourth, was at the very minimum at those crime scenes. At this point, I do believe that. I do believe that until I'm shown something else, and that would have to probably come either. Sometimes the evidence comes from the state. Honestly, it changes my mind about a defendant. But bottom line is, I have not that I can I'm at this point in the trial, I do believe that George Washington Wagner the Fourth was at the very least at those crime scenes. Because so far we haven't really heard anything about destruction of evidence. So, because that's another thing the state's alleging. So, yeah, I'm a little bit confused by her rebuttal. And so now I'm making a mental note to, when they get, and I don't think it's going to be presented through the crime scene investigators from the BCI or from Dr. Lowell. Is that her name? From the forensic pathologist from the autopsies. I don't think that evidence, I don't think we're going to get that from those 2 witnesses, but I'm reasonably sure that they're going to have a firearms and ballistics expert testify. And what would be very helpful in proving or putting a weapon that was used in the commission of these crimes in George Wagner's hands is if they have a photograph of him with one of the weapons like they do with Jake. That would definitely um raise, well, it would definitely make me start considering that he acted as a principal, right? So that's where I'm at with that. Um and I have to go. When I get off of here, I'm going to be listening to the trial and doing dishes, and so you guys know, whenever I'm around water, whether it be taking a shower or washing dishes, for whatever reason, that's where I get my best ideas and where I do all my thinking. not all of it, but a lot of it. Because my hands are busy. I think that's why. I don't know if it has anything, if it's the water or the hands or both. Who knows? But regardless, that's where I do a lot of the vast majority of my really pondering of things. So I'm definitely mulling all of these things over in my brain and considering them. And so when we reconvene this evening, I'm going to look further into this moving of the mobile homes and the crime, how long was the crime scene secured, if it was, all of those things we just talked about. And we'll talk about those definitely tonight and then summarize and listen to pertinent moments of the trial for a recap, etc. Also more discussion. So I want to thank each and every one of you guys for being here. If you haven't done so already, please give your girl a thumbs up. I hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday. Stay safe out there in the real streets and in these YouTube streets because they get dicey. And I will see all of you guys, hopefully, tonight at 9 Eastern to continue this discussion. All right. You guys have a great day, and I will see you tonight. Bye.